The tenant in apartment 4B. New York City breathes a million stories a minute, but some stories don't just live here, they fester. Amelia Clarke, a young, ambitious journalist for a niche online magazine, was convinced she'd found one such story in the unassuming facade of the Bellwether, a pre-war apartment building on the Upper West Side. Her assignment, the hidden lives of NYC's oldest buildings. She expected dusty charm, maybe a friendly ghost story from a quirky old tenant. What she found was a descent. Amelia's focus was apartment 4B. Its occupant, Mrs. Evelyn Reed, was an enigma. Evelyn had lived in 4B for 70 years, since she was a young bride in 1954. She was 89 now, a recluse whose only contact with the outside world was through her devoted, if somewhat weary, building superintendent, Mr. Henderson. Amelia's first visit to 4B was arranged through Henderson. The apartment was a time capsule. Heavy velvet drapes blocked out the harsh city light, preserving a perpetual twilight. The air was thick with the scent of potpourri, mothballs, and something else, something metallic and faintly acrid, like old pennies and ozone. Evelyn herself was a frail figure, seated in a high-backed armchair, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes a startlingly bright, almost electric blue. "Welcome, dear," Evelyn rasped, her voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Few visitors come to 4B these days. Amelia noticed the crucifixes. They were everywhere. Small, silver ones tucked into lampshades, a large wooden one above the doorway, and a rosary clutched in Evelyn's skeletal hands. "You're a very devout woman, Mrs. Reed," Amelia commented, making a mental note. Evelyn's bright blue eyes narrowed. "It's not for devotion, dear. It's for protection." Over the next few weeks, Amelia returned several times. Evelyn's stories of old New York were captivating, but there was an undercurrent of something deeply unsettling. She often spoke of a guest who had overstayed their welcome. "He arrived shortly after my husband passed," Evelyn confided one afternoon, her voice dropping to a whisper. "A darkness. It started small, a cold spot in the room, a whisper when I was alone. Then it grew. It learned my husband's voice. It called my name." Amelia, ever the skeptic, attributed it to grief, the loneliness of old age, or perhaps early dementia. Yet she couldn't shake the prickle on her skin every time Evelyn mentioned the guest. She also noticed strange occurrences during her visits. Objects would shift, a teacup would move an inch on its saucer, a book would fall silently from a shelf when no one was near. Once, while she was interviewing Evelyn, the heavy antique grandfather clock in the corner began to chime erratically, speeding up to an impossible blur, then stopping dead. "He doesn't like visitors," Evelyn said calmly, as if it happened every day. One evening, Amelia was reviewing her interview transcripts. She had recorded Evelyn, hoping to capture the cadence of her voice. As she played a particular segment, a chill ran down her spine. Beneath Evelyn's frail voice, barely audible, was a guttural growl like a frustrated animal. And then a whisper, clear as day, seemed to come from inside the recording itself. "She's mine." Amelia tried to rationalize it. An audio glitch, interference. But the hair on her arm stood on end. She decided to delve deeper into the building's history. The Bellwether had no dark secrets, no murders, no suicides. It was a perfectly ordinary, if aging, New York apartment building. But then she found a single forgotten article from the 1960s about a series of unexplained illnesses and sudden deaths among residents on the fourth floor of the Bellwether. The cases were never linked, attributed to natural causes, but the cluster was statistically improbable. The descent. Amelia started experiencing strange things outside of Aptin 4B. She'd wake up in her own apartment to the faint scent of potpourri and old pennies. She'd hear a distinct, rhythmic tap-tap-tap coming from her ceiling, directly above where she slept. One night, her cat, a usually calm tabby, suddenly hissed at an empty corner of the room, its fur bristling, before bolting under the bed and refusing to come out for hours. The dreams started then, vivid, terrifying dreams of being trapped in a dark, confined space, unable to move, while a cold, malevolent presence pressed down on her, whispering in a voice that shifted between Evelyn's, her husband's, and something ancient and unknowable. Her next visit to Evelyn was different. The apartment was colder, the air heavier. The crucifixes seemed dimmer, their silver tarnished. Evelyn herself looked even more gaunt, her skin stretched taut over her bones. But her eyes were no longer bright blue. They were dark, almost black, and when she spoke, her voice was lower, richer, with a guttural resonance that didn't belong to an elderly woman. "He's tired of waiting," Evelyn rasped, not even looking at Amelia. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle. "You've stirred him. He remembers the warmth of a young soul." Amelia felt a cold dread seize her. "Mrs. Reed, are you feeling all right? We should call a doctor." A slow, deliberate smile stretched Evelyn's lips, revealing too many teeth. "A doctor can do nothing for what he seeks." Suddenly, the air pressure in the room shifted. A heavy antique vase on the mantelpiece began to vibrate, then shot across the room, smashing against the wall near Amelia's head. The force of it made her stumble back. The apartment's lights flickered wildly, then died, plunging them into near darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow filtering through the thick drapes. In the gloom, Evelyn slowly rose from her chair. Her movements were stiff, unnatural, like a puppet whose strings were being pulled by a clumsy hand. She was taller, her limbs elongated, her head still tilted at that grotesque angle. Her eyes were now solid black orbs. "He wants to play." The voice that came from Evelyn was now deep, echoing, and entirely male. It resonated with ancient malice. "He wants to stay." Amelia, terrified, backed away towards the door. The apartment seemed to expand and contract around her, the walls breathing. The sound of the tap-tap-tap from her dreams was now coming from inside the walls of 4B, getting louder, faster. As Amelia reached for the doorknob, Evelyn, or whatever possessed her, spoke again. "You brought him out, little journalist. Now you will learn his name." The apartment went completely dark. A scream ripped from Amelia's throat as she felt a cold, skeletal hand grab her arm. She pulled free with a desperate strength she didn't know she possessed, fumbled for the doorknob, and burst out into the dimly lit hallway, slamming the door shut behind her. She didn't stop running until she was out of the Bellwether and onto the bustling street, gasping for air amidst the indifferent New York crowd. The aftermath. Amelia never returned to the Bellwether. She quit her job, unable to write a single word about the hidden lives she had uncovered. The dreams, however, continued. She still woke to the faint scent of potpourri, the metallic tang, and the rhythmic tap-tap-tap in her own apartment. She moved across the city, then out of state, but the feeling of being watched never left her. A month later, Mr. Henderson, the superintendent, found Mrs. Evelyn Reed. She was sitting peacefully in her armchair in apartment 4B, a faint smile on her face. Her eyes were once again bright, clear blue. She looked tranquil, as if a great burden had been lifted. The crucifixes in the room were all gone. Henderson told the police she had passed away in her sleep. He didn't mention the strange, almost imperceptible warmth that now radiated from the apartment, or the soft, satisfied hum that seemed to vibrate from within its walls. He also didn't mention the note he found tucked under the doormat of apartment 4B, written in a shaky, almost childlike hand. "He wants a new friend. Thank you for the introduction." In New York, some stories don't just live, they move, and sometimes they find a new apartment.